We've got a problem. We've got a lot of problems we're trying to deal with right now, and especially as preppers. There's a lot of things on the horizon that I'm not excited about, right? Right here in the United States of America right now, we have lots of problems. I feel like we are experiencing quite the spike in societal degradation. And then we have the global stage as well, where we have the possibility of nuclear war growing every single day. And these are difficult things to prepare for, and it's a lot on your plate. And we have to stay focused because right now there's so much happening here in the United States that it's hard to remember just how dangerous the threats are from outside as well, right? And that's something that I really want to kind of bring into this conversation because I feel like with what's going on in the States right now, with what's happening to our culture, it's hard to remember that we could really be on the other side of a nuclear war at any point in time, okay? So understand, a few things going on I want to address. And this is just more of an off-the-cuff video, but I just felt like I needed to talk about some of these things. And it's just important for us to kind of try to be on the same page right now. And I wanted to bring up a couple points. But the first thing is, we are definitely preparing for a nuclear war. Like we, as a country and our military, are taking steps to be ready for that possibility. Hopefully it's not an inevitability at this point, but it definitely is a possibility, right? I think we can all admit that. Well, I can tell you something from personal experience being here in Minuteman missile territory, and this is something that I just want to bring to your attention just to kind of give everybody an idea of whether or not things are moving towards that direction. But there's kind of an anomaly here just the other day, and this was verified by someone who's in my group, right, and a native North Dakotan who's been here their whole life, so I definitely trust their opinion. But I personally witnessed, and they witnessed, up to 5 different silo locations just the other day being very active, let's just say, in the sense of having a very heavily armed presence, and whatever activity they were doing at those silos on that day was well guarded and well advertised in the sense of spotlights, floodlights, Humvees with 50 cals ready to go on top, lots of active military with firearms ready to go. And generally, you could consider this to be like a routine scenario, right? Because they do maintenance, they do transfers, all kinds of different things at these silo locations, but not usually at 5 of them simultaneously, right? And that was kind of a red flag and kind of a alarm bell situation for me and my acquaintance here in North Dakota, who's a good friend of mine, great guy. And like I said, lived here his whole life and drives truck. So he's all over the state all the time and knows what is normal and what's not normal in that regard. Now I'm waiting for the comment section to let me know just how normal that is, right? But in general, I haven't seen it ever once this entire time I've lived here in the sense of multiple silo stations being serviced simultaneously, right? Not usual. And yet, myself and one of my group members both verified it with our own eyes that this was happening. So not to kind of alarm you or anything like that regarding that information, but just to remind you that we as a country are preparing for that possibility. Like we're doing the necessary steps to be ready for that to be a reality. So that should remind you that that is becoming more and more of a reality every single day. And I hope it never happens. But if it does happen, I guess I want our country to be as prepared as possible for it, right? So these movements and these activities, they're not normal. And it kind of just proves to you where we're at right now in the sense of possible World War III scenario, okay? That's huge. That's a big one to try to prepare for. And when you look behind me and you see how all this ground is still frozen, I mean, I can't really dig a hole too great right now. So there's a lot of work to be done in the sense of being ready for that situation, but we do what we can, right? Now, societal degradation is a huge one as well. And obviously there was a tragedy that just happened in Tennessee. And of course, lots of divisive vitriol happening because of that exact scenario. And it's very upsetting to me because as an American, I feel like we are being played. I feel like both sides of the argument have been played. And I don't think that situation is going to get better. And that's unfortunate because as preppers and as people who should be somewhat skeptical of any information coming from an authoritative source, right? We should be aware of the fact that division is beneficial for those who want to accumulate power, right? And why is that? Well, chaos is easier to control because you need something to come in and solve the chaotic issue. So divisiveness is a tool that's used by those who want to gain more power, and then it's also used by those who want to gain more influence. And amazingly, there's 2 groups of people in this country right now, or 2 groups of whatever you want to call them, because I don't know if all of them can necessarily be considered human beings because of the things that they're forcing our country to experience at this point in time. But these 2 groups are causing a lot of this. And I know a lot of people want to point fingers and they say, hey, this community over here, the people in it, they're the problem. And then another side of the argument wants to say, no, it's actually this community over here, they're the problem, right? It's not us. We need to stop pointing fingers at each other. But that's their goal, and it's working really well, right? But the people who are at fault for the things that are happening here in this country, I do mean the tragedy in Tennessee. Of course, you have the criminal who did the deed, right? Obviously, they have quite a bit of fault here. But the true fault, if you want to start talking about ideological and political alignments and everything else, the true fault lies at the hands of the media and their political handlers. Those are the people who are pushing these narratives that are inciting these extremist concepts and pushing people who don't have the mental capacity to understand what's happening to do something that's horrible, right? And this affects lots of different groups of people, right? It takes a very unstable person to commit an atrocity like that. But those are the people who are affected the most by this nonstop inflammatory propaganda coming out of the media machine. And of course, the media is taking orders from the political handlers who are in charge. And the political handlers gain power and influence by pushing these narratives. And the media gains profit and influence by pushing the narratives for the political handlers. So these are the people who are ruining our country. I don't know what else to say. It's just the truth. And look, obviously a Second Amendment guy. I'm a gun owner, and I think the Second Amendment is a very important part of being not only self-reliant American, but it's also a very important part for remaining free and maintaining our level of freedom, right? Understand, it's coming from a guy who didn't always own a gun, right? But when you become the victim of a gun crime, you have two options. You either maintain your status as a victim, or you understand that the only way to not find yourself in that position again is to level the playing field, right? And this is the route that I chose. Either way, I am not at fault for what's happening in this situation. And the community that that person belonged to is not at fault either. We can't sit here and try to label every single person of this group and every single person of this group as being the same as the extremist version of that, right? Most of us are just Americans who are trying to get by and live our lives and figure out how to deal with some of the challenges we face. But if you listen to the media and you listen to our politicians, you wouldn't believe that, right? You would think that everybody is either one way or the other and out for blood. And that's not the way it works. And as preppers, we should understand that. It's not us versus each other, okay? It's the people in those two groups that we just discussed versus us as Americans. So it's very unfortunate. It's definitely not a good place to be. Now, someone who is very pro 2A, I am concerned every time this stuff happens, they try to paint people like myself as part of the problem, right? And look, channel's biggest sponsor is Midway USA. They're a very pro 2A company. One of the reasons why I work with them is because I think that's a very important part of not only being able to be prepared for whatever scenario might occur, but it's a very important part for our culture. And we also have to understand that with the way this media machine works and the way that these political handlers work, well, they're going to keep pushing these narratives that incited these types of events to begin with. And it's only going to get worse. They're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until people keep doing more things. And the only way for you to deal with the things that could happen is by being prepared for it as best you can, which the Second Amendment luckily allows for in many ways. So understand that we're in a bad spot. We have some big problems, okay? And it doesn't seem like they're getting solved anytime soon. And I'm very upset with the way things are going here in this country because I love America. I really do, okay? That's just all there is to it. But I don't like what it's becoming, and I don't like the people who are supposed to have our best interests in mind. I don't like what they're doing, okay? I don't like where they're taking us. And when you look at what's happening on the world stage, and we're talking about the possibility of nuclear war, I don't like that either. And it's not my decision to keep pushing that envelope. And look, you can say whatever you want about doing what's right, okay? Argue that all you want, that's fine. But if we push and push and push, eventually there's pushback. And that's exactly what you're seeing right now when it comes to what our media and our politicians have been doing for so long now. They're pushing and pushing and pushing, and people who are already on the edge are starting to react. And they are not going to react in a pleasant manner. And I feel like that's a lot of what we're seeing right now. So, do what you can. Be vigilant, stay focused, and understand that, we are in some tumultuous times. And we don't have to like it. But we do have to remember that it's not me versus you. It's not us versus them. They're trying to do that to us. The division works, and it's been working really well. Don't fall for it. It's a trap. And man, both sides have been played very well. And unfortunately, the only people who suffer because of it are people like us, not them. Keep it in mind. That's all I wanted to say. It's going to be it for Magic Prepper.